he entered with that was one where there was very few, there was only two black Hollywood directors, really. It was Sidney Poitier and a guy named Michael Schultz. Eddie Murphy was the biggest movie star, and Richard Pryor. There wasn't really a lot going on in terms of the mainstream. And Spike's film and then the subsequent wave of filmmakers, including myself, got a chance to work. That went on for roughly, let's say 10 years, 95, you can pick where it ended. So a lot of people had access. There were a lot of, The Boys in the Hoods got made, and House Parties, and a wide range of films. There was also, within the industry, there were, New Line and Miramax, and there was lots of little Cinecom. There were a lot of independent distributors. So a lot of those films, when you look back, were really funded by the mini majors, I guess, whatever you would call it, the era. So there was a synergy between this movement of filmmakers, the acknowledgement of a black audience and a white audience for black films. And then you started having Spike was at Universal and Boys in the Hood was at Sony. So there was some penetration. And then along with the death of those mini labels, a lot of the black films went away. You still had the stars. You had Wesley and Denzel and Halle Berry, who came out of a lot of these black films, black directors who found the talent, but you didn't have access to Hollywood. So there was a long time when there was Will Smith and a couple of other people working, but it wasn't the black filmmakers who were working either did white films, like a guy like, I'm drawing a blank right, the guy who did Training Day. Antoine Fuqua, who's become a Hollywood director, and F. Gary Gray, who's become a Hollywood director, who came out of doing like Friday. So a lot of them came out of this thing, but they got mixed in with what was mainstream Hollywood. Even John Singleton has been doing like Fast and Furious movies. The access for black dramas, particularly, really, really went away. There was still always a black comedy because there were black comedians who were viable, and then you had Tyler Perry, and Tyler Perry was a real shock to the system because he brought an audience that Hollywood didn't even know it existed, that he cultivated through his traveling plays and so forth. So there was all this, he was in a way, like Spike, he was a very signature figure, obviously controversial. So, but there was all this period where all those filmmakers who had done this stuff in the 90s that we talk about, the Singletons and so forth, those films just disappeared. They weren't getting made. Some of them are now, like Ernest Dickerson does Walking Dead, and a lot of them are in TV. But that access to big screens went away. I'm very optimistic now because of Perry like Terrence, because there's a whole wave of new generation it's been a whole bunch of folks from NYU and with different visions who are coming out at Sundance, Berlin, and also using the internet to find audiences and create. Todd Bing's website, Shadow and Act, is another place where it's building community. So these things didn't exist before. So while there is some incremental movement, I would say there's been incremental progress in the sense that people can get employed. But in terms of the statements about complex black identity that young filmmakers are doing now, that's not. I don't think that's going to happen in Hollywood ever again, and it only happened very briefly when it did happen. And I think these other models are going to be the way. The only thing I want to add is that it was how a film can have an impact. Think Like a Man came out a couple of years ago, and it did like $90 million. And what's interesting is I know two films that I can trace directly. There's a sequel to The Best Man being shot in Toronto right now. And I know for a fact the producer's a friend of mine. They got greenlit because Think Like a Man did well. And Chris Rock is about to shoot another relationship-based film this summer. And again, Think Like a Man. So one film can shift. They always say, well, that's over, it's not going to happen. But one film can shift the paradigm. You never know what that film will be. So.
Problem with that is that.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I guess it's not a problem, but just, can you hear me? Okay. Is that these bursts don't seem to have any legs. They don't last. They're usually short-lived, and eventually the studios sort of seem to maybe, I guess the demand for them lessens because people just kind of get tired of saying the same thing, I think, in part. And then, then there's this, I feel like there's a burst about every decade or so. Something happens, and there's a rush of new talent and new films, black films, and suddenly we're having conversations about a new wave. But then it just kind of peters and dies out. And then, we have maybe another 8 years, and then the 9th year, somebody pops, a film pops, and then the studios want to mimic that success, and it just continues that way. It just seems like just somewhat of a vicious cycle, and something needs to happen to sort of to bring an end to that. And I think, as Nelson was saying, new media, especially the web, I think the entire process, filmmaking, has been democratized. Anyone can do it. Not everyone should do it, mind you, but anyone. The tools are accessible. The process has been democratized. Production, distribution, exhibition, it's all been democratized. It's easier, it's cheaper, and the tools are there. And so, in a way, I feel like we no longer have any excuses. Even though sometimes I feel like some of us make excuses, but we don't have any excuses anymore. And I'm not an OG, but like Mel said, but I heard that in the 60s and the 70s. It's a different mindset today, and I feel like we've become when I say we, I'm talking about my generation, me, Terrence. I think we have it easy. I really do. That might be somewhat off-putting to some, but I think it's the same sort of revolutionary mindset. It just doesn't seem to exist as much anymore, and so there isn't this desire to go above and beyond what you need to do. There's almost like this sense of entitlement that we have at times, and I feel like something needs to happen. Something needs to sort of to get us out of this funk, to get us thinking thinking revolutionary thoughts, I guess, thinking outside the box, as opposed to sort of waiting for someone to do that for us. I applaud people like Ava DuVernay, creating a firm. That's the kind of sort of out the box thinking. I think the fact that somebody in her position was able to do what she's been able to do thus far, considering that she's not rich, she wasn't. She's a publicist, and yeah, she had some contacts and connects in Hollywood, but she's, it took someone sort of. I don't want to say the proletariat, but it took someone who was sort of at the bottom of the food chain to really get something going. When you have people who are, and I don't want to start pointing fingers, but when you have people who are in positions of power, who have resources, black people, who really are in positions to make a difference, and they're not for the most part. And it takes someone like hold on, it takes someone like Ava to make something happen. So I think revolution often starts from it has to start from the little people, from us. We have to want to make something happen, and it has to be collective. It has to be decisive. It's just one of those things we can talk about these things to death, and I feel like I've been writing about film for 3 years now, but it feels like an eternity because you're often recycling the same things over and over. And I find that articles I wrote in 2009 are still very much applicable today. So I just sort of recycle them, and it's just amazing. And you tell people, you say, look, we were talking about this exact same thing 4 years ago. 4 years later, nothing has changed. So we should not be talking about it anymore. We should be actually finding a way to act and do something about it, as opposed to talking about why, there's only right now one black filmmaker who seems able to get films greenlit in Hollywood. That's Tyler Perry. And instead of bashing him, instead of coming down on him, I'm not a fan, but still, it's a matter of variety. There's a lack of it, and I just think that now is the time. There is no better time to be a black filmmaker than today. There really is not a better time. Imagine what our fathers and grandfathers went through 20, 40, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Imagine what Melvin Van Peebles went through just to get Sweet Sweetback made. You should hear his stories. It's they're rich, they're inspiring, they're encouraging, and we just, if I take filmmakers of today, young black filmmakers of today, and put them back in that time, many of you would just not make it. You would not make it. So it's, now is there isn't a better time than now to be a black filmmaker. We we no longer have any excuses, I think. Kickstarter is there, even though I'm bombarded with Kickstarter campaigns on a daily basis in my email. But I still, I think it's a great resource, and I think you should use it, and not only that, obviously, but now is a good time to be a filmmaker. End of story.
Like that. I wanted to ask Rita, you to comment on that, you know, as someone who I kind of feel starts little revolutions in the establishment all the time with the films that you choose to produce and get behind. How successful, you know, is there a place in the establishment for a diversity of voices, or is it sort of we just need to create our own new systems, you know, and just reject that whole system?
Well, first of all, I would like to know what is the audience. I mean, there have
That's a
more
great
directors
idea,
or
yeah.
producers
Who in here
or
is
writers.
is a writer? Right. And what about a director? And producers? Great.
Okay, so we have an audience full of talent,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. I think this is a huge battle. No, I can talk about my own experience. I mean, as a citizen of the world and European, when I started like living in the United States a decade ago, you know, I was shocked really by the concept of colors. You know, I was like, what is this? This is so foreign to me. I always saw the world about human beings and talented people and the community of directors, writers, and producers that is worldwide. So I never had any restriction or like never thought about boundaries really. So I think when I noticed this branding and sections and this people is Latin and the other one is Hispanic and the other is, you know, I was just like feeling that I couldn't fit in, you know, because I could not see the world in that way. So I think that it should be a serious battle that we need to present every person who could be branded in terms of let's do movies for the world, you know, let's do international movies and they can play worldwide, and that's my number one statement. So it's like, I'm not doing movies for a minority or any community, you know, because I'm the mini minority from that community, you know. I think it's more about what you want to say and how you want to say it. So if you're a writer, of course, the universe is infinitum. You know, you can create any story you could play. But I mean, for me, in terms of like the material that I chose is material who could be really related to any small community in Peru or in Sweden or like in Bangkok. Mm-hmm. But people could feel that that story is from themselves. And saying this, when we get back to the reality and how you're going to produce that movie, how you're going to finance that movie, and then you're going to hear all those statements that actually I'm hearing now, because I have one project that is from a woman that is black, first-time filmmaker, and then you see the faces of people and they're really scared to bet for that. So it's so many restrictions that you need to go through, and I think the way that I approached was like all my teams, all the crews that I put together, and all the movies that I did, they're a community of international people. So I'm extrapolate like the possibility of like, let's do and let's shoot in another country where everybody's going to be a foreigner, then maybe the language should be now English because of the economy, but we can pool, you know, the talent from many places. That's what we did. And I mean, if you check my CV, it's all my movies. You know, I'm bringing talent from everywhere. We're working all together, and we're creating a piece. You know, that my work is my own statement. Mm-hmm. So yes, you need to learn how to navigate in that sense.
Terrence, how much of this conversation informs your work that you do now? Does it at all, or how much do you think about audience?
I
You know,
don't.
obviously,
No.
everyone thinks about paying their bills, but you know.
I don't think about it at all. I mean, my process is very internal, and you know, I'm not even really careful to keep it pure in that way and keep my mindset on what I'm making as opposed to who it's for or what you know, commercial possibilities it has. And I think that's the way. I mean, not to tell anyone else how they should make work, but I think that that's very important in, you know, guarding the momentum it takes to complete something as difficult as a feature film. Mm-hmm. Because, your intentions will constantly be called into question from an artistic point of view. So you never want them to be called into question from any other point of view. But that's not to say that I don't interact with these questions in kind of the other hats that I wear. And I think that, as somebody who kind of operates in a community of filmmakers who also produce and, I co-write as well, these questions constantly come up. And still to the lean that, we're all trying to make the most original, provocative, personal, dynamic work we can, and hoping that because of those attributes of it, that it will be widely seen or widely patronized. And to me, I think the global perspective is really important now, because especially in Hollywood, most films are made on the back of foreign money, one way or the other, with the promise of selling it, for foreign pre-sales, or with the promise of it, selling a lot of tickets when they release it in Europe. So I think that on some level we're all kind of oriented towards the world now, in terms of who's going to watch the movie. But also, I think the biggest difference, obviously existing among mostly filmmakers of color, we're always thinking about the resources available to us to produce films versus the resources available to our white counterparts to produce films, and seeing how those are different. And I think the main thing is that there doesn't seem to be who produced the Megan Ellison. She did like The Master and Moonrise and stuff like that. There doesn't seem to be this like large moneyed interest coming along and patronizing black filmmakers simply because of the artistic voice present, as opposed to the marketability of it, or who's going to see it, what stars could be attached to it. I think the only example I can think of off the top of my head is Steve McQueen, and how Plan B has kind of patronized what he's doing simply because of his voice as an artist. But other than that, and that's a very new thing, I don't see that happening. Whereas I do see it happening to P.T. Anderson or Wes Anderson, that type of thing. So whenever the Megan Ellison comes along for this community, I think that would be that would change our outlook on what's available for us to kind of make films with, in films that are original and specific to us and our experience.
I want to add that I remember a conversation with Alejandro González Iñárritu when he was putting together Babel, and then another conversation that we had when he was working on Beautiful. And I remember in Babel, as soon as we got Brad Pitt attached, everything was like hitting, like speed, and the budget was like 5 times more, and it was really impressive. And then with this movie, like Beautiful, everybody was like, but it's in Spanish, everybody was like horrified. And he got the finance, but the truth is that it was like a huge problem in distribution in the United States. And that brings another level. There's so many layers of this problem, It's like with this new economy that we're living, that I think is going to stay for a long time, unfortunately, people is getting more afraid to not only, forget about like, if we're talking about a movie of color, movies in general, like independent cinema, like new statements and new ways to see the world, which is not a comedy, which is not uplifting, which is not easy or like simple or simplistic approach of the world. Any movie is getting incredible problems to be financed, and everybody wants the same. Everybody wants like a great director with a great cast. So you get all of this when you want them. You don't need them really. So I think what could be the solution? What could be the approach also for new filmmakers? I really am a big believer in technology, and I think that now more than ever it's easier to do movies. I remember this movie that I did with Jonas Cuarón, Aña Uña, was $8,000. And when I came on board and I said, look, we should take it to a festival in Venice and let's try to get in competition, etc. Blowing the movie to a negative was $150,000. So look, but now the technology could give you the chance to do a statement. And if the movie is good, it's going to run, it's going to have a life, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think the international thing is really primary. I mean, when you look at what's going on with African cinema, African cinema's rise around the world is a direct contradiction of everything we've been told in Hollywood forever. That is that black people stories don't travel. Stories that are told in Nigeria and in Ghana and South Africa are available in Brooklyn and in Sao Paulo and in Jamaica, and it's a global black cinema coming from Africa that travels all over the world. And we were told for years and years, no, it's not possible, no one cares outside of America. In fact, you would think that the black American culture would travel farther because it's a more quote-unquote universal culture. But I think that what's going on with African film is really exciting. And what's going on with African music, that's another thing, but there's great turmoil and great creativity coming out of South Africa and Lagos and so forth. And those are the bridges that I'm trying to work on now. I feel like it's no point in trying to make a film, a feature film that's a drama particularly, and thinking I'm only going to sell it in Brooklyn and in LA. I should be thinking about Toronto and London, what is these fantastic, vibrant communities of people of color. And that the intersections, I mean, what's really interesting is that black culture, as we know it in America, has influenced youth culture all over the globe. So there's intersections where you can go to South Africa and house music from Chicago is now the cutting edge of a lot of South African dance music. So the same cultural intersections that are happening musically definitely are possible in storytelling. So I really urge anyone to think about these ideas, whatever idea you're developing. How do you connect with these communities through your story, or if not directly through the story, through the storytelling, the use of music? How do I make my film feel the film as a citizen of the world and not locked into the American point of view, because it's a reductive viewpoint on culture. That's the bottom line. American films, even if from a storytelling point of view, I worked at the Sundance Institute as a script advisor a few times, and the Hollywood screenwriters would come there. They 3-act structure. This has to happen at this point. Blah 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 blah. And it's a dogma that kind of reinforces a way, it's an imperialistic or colonial vision, of the world, of how stories should be told. When every tradition around the world has a different way of telling stories. And so to embrace that, I just think there's an opportunity for all of us to be engaged in a much bigger way of looking at making a movie and also getting financing. Because if you're engaging these cultures, then you can go to Hot Docs in Toronto or go to Cannes, because people are looking for stories. And there's cable outlets all over the globe. I did a documentary called Brooklyn Boheme a couple of years ago, and I got I didn't really realize there was the Sudan had a cable channel. I hate to say that sounds, I just didn't know. And wow, you mean it's playing in Sudan? So the fact is that there's all of these different opportunities. If you look at an American model, you don't even aware of what's going on in Africa, Caribbean. I just think it's following up on Tabe's thought, that there's a lot of opportunity. It's going to be outside the box that we're used to working in. But that box is broken. So let's go and find another box.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's
You're so fired.
Because I don't get my honorarium. Yeah, the internet really, it's a global economy now, right? And so the internet, thank you. The internet has really, because you won't find the internet in every nook and cranny on the planet, but it's in probably, I don't know what the figures are nowadays, probably 80% of the world has internet access, and much of that is broadband access. And people are looking to connect. And as Nelson was saying, don't just think, I guess, of just as you're writing your story and trying to make that feel global, but financing. And I try to reiterate this on the blog, on my site very often, is that there's money available in other parts of the world, especially in parts like Nigeria, for example. There's 3 or 4 different filmmakers, black filmmakers, in the last 3 or 4 years or so have found financing in Nigeria specifically. One of them had connections. He was from there, but he lived in the UK, born and raised. Thomas Akimi, he made a film called Legacy. This was, 3-4 years ago, which Idris Elba executive produced and starred in. It's on Netflix. I think you can probably find it there. But that was financed. That was a $500,000 film, and he got the money from Nigerian investors. So think globally, not just when you're telling a story, but also when you're thinking about how you're going to finance your movie. Don't just think that you're going to get the money only from the USA or from Hollywood or from investors here in the States. There's money in other parts of the world. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard to figure out how to get to that money, and I try to research this as much as I can and write about this on the site and sort of make connections, so you know where to go and how to apply for this stuff. But there are people out there who are actually readily looking to invest in content, especially they think that it's partly because it's a prestige thing, especially if it's American. I mean that's a whole other conversation. But really, it's like there's this, American cinema, Hollywood cinema is sort of like global cinema, and it's everywhere. It's traveled the world. I mean, you go to Nigeria and you see, or you go to Ghana and you see posters for Terminator 2 or something, which were probably created by Ghanaians, and it's all painted up and it looks very interesting. But there's a lot of money out there that I think is just not even being tapped into, and if you just know how to get to it. There are lots of co-production markets, and we write about this stuff all the time. I think people who read the blog often, hopefully you see many of these things. We're writing about co-production markets that happen in Europe, South Africa, especially in those two regions in the Middle East, Mediterranean, South Mediterranean, North Africa, that whole area. There are lots of co-production markets, and many of these are looking for projects to put in front of investors, to put in front of production partners from other parts of the world. It's an international marketplace now. So you have to sort of broaden your thinking, not only in the way you tell your story, but also in how you go about putting the project together. There's lots of sort of cross-continental Pan-Africanist sort of pairings nowadays with you have some Nollywood Nigerian cinema, Nollywood filmmakers who are pairing up with American actors. You have Ghanaian filmmakers who are pairing up with European, with Black British, Black French, Black German actors. So there's a lot of that happening. Because there are no borders anymore. And I think this is probably because of the web. That whole process is just think bigger, think broader. Don't limit yourself to Hollywood. I mean, obviously, it depends on what your motivation is, what your end goal is. I mean, I think just to piggyback what Terrence was saying about sort of the personal way he goes about making films and sort of blocking everything else out. I think there's some people who embrace that sort of assembly line way of making films, and they're sort of chasing that pie in the sky Hollywood 3-picture deal with Disney, and so they want to tell stories that fit that model. Unlike Terrence, but I think you find that, which is something else that I reiterate a lot, is really maybe there's nothing quite original anymore, but I think the original is sort of in the personal. So it's like you have to just personalize your films. Don't care about what other people are making. Don't care about fitting some model, and just tell your story. And I think you'll find that if you look at the past maybe 5, 6 years, maybe 10 years, many of the filmmakers who have made that transition from indie filmmaker to Hollywood filmmaking were people like Terrence, who came in with very original voices, and because of the original voices, they got attention, and because of that attention, they that it went on from there. You have people like Darren Aronofsky, who made Pi, a film that he probably would not have been able to make within the Hollywood studio system, but he made it. You have Ben Zadlin, who made Beasts of the Southern Wild. He probably would not have been able to make that film within the Hollywood studio system. You have there are many of them. The guy who made Upstream Color, I forget his name right now. But there are many filmmakers who came, who just, they made their original films. They did not care what anybody else thought. They were not trying to fit a model, a story structure. They said, I have an idea, I love it, I want to see this realized, and I'm going to make it happen. And because of their original vision, they're now making films in Hollywood, but still sort of trying to stick to that personal style that is what got them there in the first place.
Yeah, I want to address the Europe question, because I remember for years and years you'd hear that there was no market for films of people of color in Europe. But I spent a lot of time in France a couple of years ago, and I met a lot, and I realized what was really discussions going on was there for years was not about the audience. It was about the gatekeepers, and that in fact the people in Paris who run France, they didn't really want to acknowledge there were any black people there, period. Much less I'm going to spend money to market a film to them, or there's an audience. So a lot of those old wives' tales about, especially Europe, because Europe is such a central market, a lot of it is self-fulfilling prophecy. And what the African films have shown, and what, even if you go there see musicians travel there, you see this multicultural audience. that's there to be entertained by culture. So to dovetail what I'm saying, there is an opportunity to go. I mean, I urge any young filmmaker to take the time and go to international markets, even get the phone book and look at the French, like MK, whatever French production companies or distributors or distributing films you like. Make the outreach. You don't need to have an agent to do that. You need to have you got to be aggressive. It's the same thing as knocking on the door. Why you go to LA? You could go to London or Paris and do the same thing, and open yourself up to new opportunities, new relationships, because they're looking for stories as well. And everyone is looking for these stories that are the global story. I mean, I'm just hoping, but there's so much stuff like that. I'm really, and I urge everyone to be optimistic, and because there's a lot of negativity. This can't happen. They haven't done this. Don't live in that place. Live in a place where you're creating new possibilities. The technology, the mindset of people today about what's global, what is culture. There's no pure culture anymore. Like, it's just German culture. It's just everything is a huge mix. Some people are frightened of it, obviously, and it's a big part of a lot of things going on in the globe is fear of a black planet, so to speak. But that idea of that multicultural nature of life, that's where the opportunities are for the stories to be told. So I'm really, I'm really actually excited about it. I shot a film that I've been working on. I just shot it on a Canon. I've been working on it for 2 years. We shot in Paris, Berlin. We shot the ending of it in Addis Ababa. We're still trying to put it together. But it was inspired by my trips to Europe, to seeing like, oh, there's black Germans, and I'm meeting black French people. I'm meeting mixed people of all kinds. We have different, and let me try and make a film about that. And I think the more you travel, I think that's maybe a big part of it too. I think that if you're a filmmaker, get out to all the international festivals, and the opportunities will be there. You'll see stories that you would never have thought of if you just stayed in Williamsburg. I'm not dissing Williamsburg, but you get my point.
I would like to add that one of the biggest mistakes that I hear constantly is from filmmakers, directors, and writers, and they're coming and they're showing me their work, and so it's like, look, in order to convince you to be part of it, it's like, but this is very, very tiny. I rather thinking that should be super small so we can shoot it for very little money. And I'm like, no, I mean, you're a talent. You shouldn't think like that, you should think big, because why you're gonna constrict your imagination? You have to keep your integrity, and you have to keep your imagination going, and no matter what is the thematic of the movie, because who could ever imagine that Y Tu Mamá También will be played so well worldwide? It's like a story of two teenagers, like Mexican, and they're like a really crazy land, and look at this, look at the size of the movie at the end of the day. So what I'm trying to say is that the production is not your job when you're a talent. The size of the budget is the problem of your producer. And if you are a new producer, what I will say is like just trying to get a great mentor, like a person who you could respect and you can look up, and who could come and talk to you and telling you how to tight your budget, how to make it possible, but in a creative way, not like just cutting absurd stuff, it's like make it like possible. As you mentioned it, I think it's every time I read the script, and I remember this example because it was really funny, was The Dancer Upstairs with John Malkovich, and it was like a story that is being set in Peru where the terrorist group Sendero Luminoso, and he wanted to shoot there, which is like at that time was incredibly dangerous, and it was like a huge process to convince him to do like the interiors in Madrid, the landscape in Ecuador, and then we ended shooting like some exteriors in Portugal, in Oporto, but this is part of this intellectual creative process that the director, the writer, and the producer have to walk. But if you have a producer who has a lot of experience, that producer could see immediately the possibility to shoot and make that happen, because it's like, well, with this of money and this treatment that I can put together, this co-production plus this part of equity and the process, I can do the movie happen.
Yeah, well, it's so great to hear everyone being so positive about it. This part of this panel, it's under the Tribecca All Access program, which we started 10 years ago, and you know, over the years with technology changing, we kind of realized that that program, when it started, was kind of about charming the gatekeepers. And Warrington Hudlin, who I think is in the audience,
earlier.
I saw him, is, you know, has been a personal mentor for me, but also, you know, has sort of been pushing us with the Tribecca All Access program. You know, and I remember him saying, you know, don't try and charm the gatekeeper, you have to build a new door. And that's kind of, you know, what he's done, been pushing with DV Republic, and that's what technology allows us to do. But there's also, you know, for us, the program became a granting program 2 years ago because we realized that, you know, that's essentially what filmmakers now need, you know, is they need capital. And this idea of having a patron for the arts kind of focused on very specific content or even a specific community. I don't know. Do you think that's part of the way forward?
I mean, you know, the Ford Foundation has been an incredible supporter of so many independent. Orlando Bagwell, who's actually unfortunately leaving soon, has supported filmmakers up and down, especially documentary filmmakers, amazingly. So there's a lot of granting organizations that have. I mean, there's actually quite a bit of money out there, depending on what you're doing. It's all about putting the legwork in. I mean, I'm not saying you'll get all your full budget, but there's a lot of money to be had if you target. I'm making a film about this. Sundance, for example, has a screenwriting competition for films about science because they feel like that's an area that's underutilized.
We do too.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
TFI.
I'm sorry about that.
Sloan Filmmaker Fund.
There are several great
Yep.
science-based. So there is. I mean, the thing is, it's a hustle. I mean, I always think that I've had friends who moved to LA, and you know they got a big house in Beverly Hills, and they got a nice pool, but their life has been. They made a decision to go there, and their life has been defined by that. So they do TV shows, and but they also an incredible amount of frustration. If we were doing the same panel in LA, I bet you it would sound completely different. I bet you, because they're in the belly of the beast. And
Like we would sound different?
no, they would sound different.
Okay.
No. We'd say the same things. But they would because the vibe there is you're in LA and it's you begin working for the town. If you want to go to LA and you're a filmmaker, yes, go to LA, but know that you're going to get a job for the most part. You're not really going to do your thing. You're going to get a job. You're going to learn how to write a TV show or a half-hour comedy. You're going to learn how to write a big action movie or a romance comedy. Yeah, and that's what they're paying for. So just know that you're not to say you're not an artist anymore, but you become much more of a craftsman. I would say that's the difference, and that's the job. It's not dissing it, but that's the decision you're making because you don't go to LA to make your personal movie. I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. You go there to get a job, and get a house and maybe get a Porsche if you're lucky.
So
You know,
is this-
I was going to say one more thing about TV because TV is a big part of this discussion
Yeah.
too. You know, as the big studios to stop making, you know, the middle drama, that quality drama, that was a big part of what we thought Hollywood movies are. Those have migrated to TV, you know, cable and even networks. But even there, if we're going that route, you know, Shonda Rhimes has had an incredibly successful career, and you know, Scandal and Grey's Anatomy. But she's such an anomaly. I don't believe there's any other creator of drama or showrunner, certainly, who's of color. I mean, say of color. I mean, it may be a Latino person that I'm not sure about, but I'm telling you, overall, and without the showrunners and the creators being of color, they do not hire on staff. It's so few. I know there's a brother who writes for Justified. There's a couple of other young black writers and Latino writers on some other mainstream shows, but it's usually one per staff. There's a Chael Coker, I think, works on Southland. He's you know, he started in hip hop writing and he's a screenwriter, but they stick out. So even though you know dramatic TV is in this great renaissance and we're saying great things about it, except you'll find Carl Franklin doing 2 episodes of House of Cards. You'll find Ernest Dickerson doing Walking Dead. You'll find some of the directors, but in terms of the creative control and the input, it's almost nil. So even though there's an opportunity, if you are trying to tell stories of color, I think Scandal is the first drama that's minority lead. I'm trying to think someone that was that's been successful. Let's put it that way. I think Jimmy Smits maybe had a show or two, but it's so rare. I mean, I'm just, you know. So even in all, we know that America is more complex. We know it's more diverse. We know there's all these great stories we told, and still in this renaissance of nighttime TV, we're plucking one or two things out of the air. So again, that's why things like Awkward Black Girl, or very, she's made her own thing. She's built her own following. That's going to be YouTube. I know kids in YouTube who are making 50, 60 G's a year because they built a following. So that's where the thing is.
Well, is that the question really that we're talking about, which is who has the means to tell their own stories right now? Like, is it people need jobs?
Yes.
Is that the question? Is that there is, and it may actually even be more diverse than we think. Kind of an elite group of people who have the means to buy a camera and not work for 8 months.
Well, I don't think anybody doesn't. I think everyone still works. They're just shooting on the weekends. I mean, I think that I don't tell nobody to quit their day job. but I do think that the capability of making good content with your community. I mean, I'm a big believer in the community thing.
Yeah.
I did this doc, Brooklyn Bones on Fort Greene. It was all about community. It was an amazing amount of talent, and the relationships that came out of that particular era in the 80s and 90s. I still work with a lot of the actors, filmmakers. Your people who you come up with, actors or graphers or whatever they're going to be, or just people who do publicity. That's where the strength is. And even those guys who are doing out of Brooklyn who did Marley. I get just so many M's. Borderline films. That's a community of guys who got together, and they made two or three films. Now they built a little team. That's how it happens. It happens out of your posse. The hip hop model actually is a usable one. The being posse deep works. Having a bunch of people who you're down with. Almost every creative community that you can go back to starts with like-minded individuals, and that's how you get stuff done on the low. And then you collectively make money, see people break off, whatever. But that's how it starts, and it starts with that core. The people sitting next to you who you came here with are probably the same people you'll end up making work with.
Yeah, there's lots of examples of that.
I think the people that become the patrons. We're talking about having this one personal organization, but I think really it's the people, which is why sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo are thriving, because that's where a lot of filmmakers are going to get the money that they need to make the films that they need to make. Not just black filmmakers, or filmmakers of color, but filmmakers, period. I think since Kickstarter was created in 2009, I think the latest stat is that they've raised something like over $110 million. Not all of it has been for film projects, but I think probably
like 40%.
I think a healthy number of it has been just for film projects. So I think, it will be nice. I mean, I wish I would, if anyone in here maybe hits the Powerball and has $200 million sitting around. You can be that person, but people are winning the Powerball when it happens. what they do with the money, I don't know. But they have their own agendas. They have their own things going on. But really, until that one person or those two people or that organization steps up, and I'm talking that right now specifically about black cinema or African diaspora cinema. Until that happens, I mean, I think it's going to be us or filmmakers depending on other people to get the money that they need to make their films, and that's happening more and more often. I mean, if you have a film that's $1 million budget, you're probably not going to get that money on Kickstarter. I'm sorry, but I think in a way it unless you're Veronica Mars and you are Kristen Bell and you can do that. But if you're average Joe Schmo filmmaker just out of NYU, Columbia, wherever, or none of those schools, and you want to make a film, it's okay. I need to raise money, and you sort of say thank goodness for sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. If you just put together a decent package, maybe you shoot 10 minutes of whatever your idea is, you show something, convince enough people to give you, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000. you get your film made, because a lot of films are being made in that range, that sub $100,000 range right now. How many of them, are end up being whatever those filmmakers define as success? I don't know. But I know. Like I said, I get countless on a weekly basis, countless Kickstarter and Indiegogo campaigns, and much of them, which is a whole other conversation. Much of them are just not very well put together. But some of them, I look at them and I say, wow, that looks very, very interesting. I want to see that film made. I just posted something about this. A group of 5 exonerated black men in Dallas, Texas, who they all were convicted of crimes they didn't commit and spent decades in jail. They got out of jail, and they decided to form a detective agency to help other people who have been falsely convicted of crime. So they're investigating cases. I mean, that is what they've done. And so somebody wanted to make a film about them. I thought this is a really great idea. And so I wrote about it. And so, I'm always looking for really interesting, sort of original, unique ideas. But really, I think that people have become the patron. That people they're the ones who are funding many of the films that especially the low budget films that you're seeing today. And I think in a way it really forces you to get creative when you're working with very little money, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I'm one of those people who doesn't think that you need a gazillion dollars to make a film. I think much of Hollywood is really wasteful spending. I don't think you need so much money to make these films. But hey, I mean, what do I know? So I think that's where we're going. I think Nelson mentioned someone like Issa Rae, who just created a web series. She just put up, I remember the very first time she put episode 1 up in 2011. I just happened to be on Facebook and she posted it, and I said, what is this? And I just played it and said, this looks interesting, it's kind of funny. So I posted it on my website, and then other people saw it, saw it on Facebook as well, on other sites, and they started posting, and then it just ballooned into this thing, became a phenomenon, and then she is monetizing it now, and now she's created this, I don't know, I think she has something like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of subscribers she has on her YouTube channel, but she's created a network. Really, it's a network. It's a TV station on YouTube that she has, with, I think right now she's producing about 4 or 5 different other shows, not just hers, and she's becoming a showrunner on YouTube. She's becoming like Shonda Rhimes of YouTube. So it's you have to sort of, it's just fascinating and very interesting to watch, but it's also very inspiring, I think, and I don't see how you cannot be inspired by that kind of a success. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen to every single person, but she was just this 20-something LA gal who just had an idea and she did it, and this happened.
Because I think like the assumption that she's just like everybody else is, I don't think we should run with that. Just because I think her extraordinary writing ability, you know what I mean? And I think that, she had tools that she cultivated that are necessary, storytelling tools and, comedic tools. Stanford grad. I just think that I agree with that everybody should feel empowered to experience the type of success that she has or Shonda Rhimes, but I don't think it's fair to say that everyone is equipped with the skills she had to make a show like Awkward Black Girl and all the shows she's involved in successful.
But some could say that Awkward Black Girl is not a well-written show. I mean, so
It's
I guess
not what?
it's not actually a well-written show. Like there's that criticism
Yeah,
too.
I mean-
So I guess my point is just that I don't think her Stanford degree has anything to do with it. I really don't. I'm sorry. I cannot buy that argument. I don't think.
You don't think everyone from Stanford is funny?
Maybe not Stanford,
because
she's not like everybody else. Like she's not like pulling somebody off the street. Oh, you the next Issa Rae. You know what I mean? It's not like, you know what I mean?
But that's not my point either. I'm not saying that everyone. Like I think the first point I make when I first started speaking was that not everyone can make film. Not everyone can do that. What I'm saying that those who have the desire to, don't let that stop you, for God's sakes. I mean, don't say, well, I don't have the tools. I didn't go to Stanford. I don't have an NYU film degree. I mean, who cares? If you have an idea, if you have the passion, go for it. I mean, if it sucks, it sucks. If people don't take to it, they don't take to it. But don't limit yourself. Don't kill the dream because you don't think that you have the skills to succeed or to do what it is that you want to do. Just run with it. Just go with it.
Frida, I saw you shaking your head. Is there something you agreed or disagreed with?
I don't know. I really believe that. Well, I'm completely agree with Terence. You know, I think talent is talent, and also access is access, and contacts are really valuable in this business. You know, saying this, you know, I think Hollywood has this approach that has been worked and is working. I mean, you can see the numbers and you see the box office, and everybody's the argument of the distributors that they're telling you like this kind of movies work because they're following trends. You know? There's like one movie who works, and then let's do 400 exactly the same. I think my approach and the approach of my company, and I suggest you guys to follow me, is like, what is going to be the next trend? What is the next wave? You know, let's discover what is like the next original thing. And maybe over there, that could be a huge window of opportunity. You know, thinking like, there's so many movies about this, but let's just stop thinking in that area. No? Let's discover what is the new one. And probably, it's so many factors. You have to have the talent. You know, without talent, we're not going to build a new era here. You know?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but there's so many people who have made it who I don't think are talented at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not talented. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think talent has much to do. I mean, I think that's part of it. But just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to make it. Like, I just don't. I mean, I know a lot of very talented people who are struggling right. I mean, Barry Jenkins made Medicine for Melancholy in 2008.
Fantastic film.
Great film. It's 2013. Barry hasn't made another feature film. I mean, I spoke to him. I mean, I speak to him not all the time, but we had a conversation, and he's telling me, you know, man, you know what? 2 weeks ago, I was working construction in San Francisco. Man, you know, a week ago, I took this. I mean, he's getting small these little jobs, making short. Like he's made about 3 or 4 short films for Borscht, and I think he did one for Bloomingdale. These sort of ad, you know, splashy ad campaigns that are, you know, short films with their ads. He's done about 3 of those things. I mean, he did one for Future States, ITVS, that whole initiative thing. But he has ideas, he has scripts, but he cannot get them made. He's a talented guy. He's a talented filmmaker. He can write, he can direct, he has vision, he has ideas. He cannot get these projects off the ground. You know, I mean, he does have a producer. He does have a good producer. You know, I mean, like, I'm just saying that I'm saying it's not that there isn't a blanket. I guess there isn't a blanket rule for everyone. There isn't a blanket rule. I mean, it's just not easy. It's not easy.
The second feature is always hard.
Yeah, it's worse.
The second feature is always hard for everybody.
You know, I remember that Alfonso used to say like, but he says this actually after every single movie. So it's like, imagine to be in front of the army and everybody's punching you. And you're like, they're terrified. So like, they're gonna shoot me, or they're gonna forgive me and save my life. You know, you never know, because, you know, you did a super successful movie, and the next one, everybody's ready to kill you. So, and this is being said by someone super famous who already make it, who already is making his living doing his job in the way he liked it to do. So, yeah, I mean, we never said that this is not easy, super challenging. Actually, this work is challenging.
I mean, I'm not saying that. Okay, I just want to be very clear, because I don't want people, you know, people to get the wrong idea. As Spike Lee has said many times, learn your craft. I'm not saying you should not learn your craft. I mean, definitely know what you're doing. Study writing. I mean, if you're a writer, read and write. If you're a filmmaker, watch films, and don't just watch, you know, sort of Hollywood films. Really broaden your horizon. Watch films from all over the world. Watch Bollywood movies. Watch Nollywood movies. Watch films from, I don't know, Iran, from wherever. Just really watch as many films as you can and see how it's done everywhere. Because I think that really influences and that inspires, and it speaks to your work. So learn your craft. I mean, know what you're doing. I mean, which is what I said initially, is not everyone can do this, but, you know, if you're going to do it, yes, definitely make sure you know what you're doing. Don't just say, I'm going to make films and I'm going to take my little iPhone and, you know, and I'm going to make the next epic film or something. No.
We'll start with a 6-second film. Fine. Okay, so I thought we could open it up to questions. So we don't have microphones. I'll just try and hear you and repeat your question. Yes.
Hi, I'm going to be a college student in the fall. I'm doing high school right now, and I'm planning to go to school not for film, but with the intention of the best of the rest of my life. And I actually turned out to go to school in the cities that I could go to smaller schools with the same resources, and I thought I'd have more of an opportunity to spend more time in their studios and their cameras, and, you know, maybe a lot more, and I get it a bigger university.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I know you're going to focus on film. I think you also should focus on some other subject that you're
Oh,
passionate
yes,
about.
but Terrence has to leave. I'm sorry.
Oh.
He has to catch a
See,
flight.
take care.
Sorry. Terrence, what's your Twitter handle so if they have a question they can ask you?
Terrence Nance, TERENCE, 1 R no A.
Okay, Terrence Nance, 1 hour, no A.
What are you going to major in aside from film?
Political science.
Good, because one thing I always suggest is to have an expertise in something, because I think it's very important. I was very fortunate. I got involved with music, and that became my expertise. So even when I started doing films and working in TV and stuff, there was a place that I had I knew a lot about, and people trusted me as an expert. So it helped me a great deal. I think it's very important not just to be studying film, but to study something that's a real world thing that's tangible, because a lot of your stories will come out of your knowledge of political science. There's so many great stories, obviously, in the world of politics and drama out of that. So it's very important to study the craft of film or whatever you're doing, but also study some other, or have some other life experience. It's really important, I think. Sometimes you get films that are about films. Some people like Tarantino manage to make a living at it, but most people who do films about films end up being very reductive. It's important to have something they're drawing upon. There's always going to be the autobiographical film that everyone kind of does, but it's really important to go out in the world, take a job or internship in something that's going to challenge you, that you may learn more about the world from, while you're in this really great period where you can afford to work for nothing.
Yeah, in the back there.
Hi everyone, I'm a filmmaker from South Africa, and I just want to ask the panel a question on what do you guys think about collaborations? We've talked about how there's a bit of a hump in terms of black filmmakers finding funding for their films and things like that. What if you, I don't know, collaborated with a white producer, if that's a means to an end? Are the means, is that the important thing, or is the end, you getting your story out, what it is that you actually are veering towards?
So I think the question is about what do we think about collaborations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like them.
Is there a time when one has worked well for you,
But
or
the movie making is a
that's what it
collaboration
is, yeah.
effort. I mean, you can't go too far if you don't have like a lot of people pushing to try to get one movie happen. You know, like yes, I'm a big believer in co-productions and like talking with other colleagues of mine. I'm like talking with producers. I was like, do you have something? Can I join efforts and trying to make this happen? I mean, it's a collaborative work per se.
Did that address your question?
My question was specifically with black and white producers.
Oh yeah, I
Black
work
and
with
white
white
producers.
yeah, I work with white producers and white directors. Yeah,
So-
whatever works for the project.
I really don't think that, you know, I think that concept, I mean, I'm telling you, I think that concept has been created in America and for some circle of people. I mean, I seriously, I don't get it. Just
Because you're saying
right now, I mean, I have a movie from a great filmmaker, Janicia, and she's, it happens and she's black, but I mean, I read her script and number one, I didn't even know that she was a woman. I just read a script that I love and I was laughing and I was like, well, what a sharp, strange comedy that is like weird and is very dark. And then it happens and we get the meaning and oh my God, it's a girl. And then she's black and she's super beautiful. And like, wow, well, this is an asset, right? But I mean, I don't really, I can't imagine that someone could read something thinking that this person is this, and this is yellow, and the other one is blue, and the other one is purple. I mean,
Well, I think some people have maybe taken a more sort of militant approach to the whole process. I mean, there's, I'm thinking of August Wilson wrote. This was, I think, in the early '90s. I think it was when he was trying to get a film version of Fences made, and Eddie Murphy was a star in it and all that. And He wrote this piece called "I Want a Black Director." That's what he was calling it. I want a black director. And in it, he just, in summary, he was essentially saying, and I guess maybe this goes to the whole authorship authenticity thing, that he didn't feel that he felt that it would take a black producer, a black director, a black writer to make this an authentically black film. And so he pushed for that. I mean, I think that's probably, I mean, one of the reasons why it never went forward, because Eddie Murphy was just like, I mean, this was all in what he said, so I wasn't there, so I don't know, but I'm just going based on what he said in the piece that I read anyway. He said, Eddie Murphy didn't really have, obviously he didn't see it the same way that August Wilson did. He didn't feel that a black director needed to direct this film. He wanted the best director, and August Wilson said, "You know what? I want a good director. I'm not saying just give me a black director just because he's black. I want a good black director." So I think that's kind of maybe what she's kind of getting at. Whether you have to, if you're a black filmmaker, to tell an authentically black story, I don't know. Do you need to have a black producer? I mean, I don't think you do. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think
maybe depend on the story.
And look, we just had the 20th anniversary of a film I produced called CB4, which is a crazy comedy. And the director is a white woman named Tamara Davis. And the reason Chris Rock and I hired her was that she had done all the NWA videos, the DOC. She was embedded. She had made a lot of the kind of videos we were making fun of in the movie. So we figured, okay, we got the black shit covered. So we needed someone who was going to bring another sensibility, who had actually made. She was involved in creating some of the iconography that we were making fun of. So we felt like that was a great collaboration, and the film is is a good cult movie for that. But I want to talk about 42 since we're talking about authenticity. I know how many people have seen 42. Okay, all right. So 42 is a film that has a white producer writer that Spike Lee had wanted to do since Do the Right Thing. He's walking around in the movie with the Jackie Robinson jacket. For me, as a viewer, and this talk about authenticity, I thought the film worked on the level the film was designed to work as a Disney movie. However, as a experience of a black, I think there were things in that film that just weren't there, that I think a black director, in my opinion, would not have left out. And I'll just give you a couple examples. They allude to the Negro Leagues in the film, but they really don't deal with the Negro Leagues. The fact is there was this alternative black economy that was created that Jackie participated in, and that he was picked out of a pool of players specifically for certain. I mean, that whole world that was a rich world that was destroyed by Major League Baseball, that was parallel to Major League Baseball, isn't really given any due. But more profoundly, throughout the film, the Branch Ritchie character, played by Harrison Ford, is explaining often to Jackie Robinson how to deal with racism. And I said to myself, well, Jackie had gone to UCLA for 4 years in Southern California in the 1940s. He'd been an officer in the U.S. Army and had been court-martialed at one point. So by the time so that's part of why obviously he was selected, but also Jackie Robinson knew how to deal with racism. I don't think he needed I mean, I just felt like that film was very manipulative in the sense that these lessons that were being given to Jackie Robinson, in the frame of the film, he said it's like a very narrow box of this guy's life. And I know Spike, for whatever Spike's problems as a filmmaker or whatever, that would not have eluded him, all of that context. So the film felt totally outside of context for me. Jackie's relationship to the black community in Brooklyn is even not really explored in any way, really. So that's an example of a film that I'm not saying the 42 you shouldn't take your kid to see it, and it's actually an introduction to a lot of American history, but it is very contextualized. It's very outside a box that I think any black director or writer would have grappled with some of these other issues, and that's where the debate comes in. It's not to say that white directors or writers shouldn't do black stories. I never say that. But there is something often that a black filmmaker will bring to a certain story that is useful. And I want to see Spike's script now. I really want him to put it on the internet and see, because I'd like to see how he dealt with some of these issues that the film, I think, kind of skirts around.
But I just want to say something. I think for me, it's something that I really, really admire is when you put the camera in another place. So the vision of a foreigner watching your culture, it is incredibly interesting because they're watching with a different point of view. And then you have Ang Lee, you know, like
Right.
watching
I think
like
there's a difference
putting the
between what
camera
you're
in a
saying.
yeah.
I think I agree with. This is because we're dealing with an American cultural box.
Which is inside of the box, which is very American.
Right. We're boxy people.
Like very solipsistic. It's like inside
So-
of inside of inside.
I think you're right. I think
It's like a matryoshka, the way that I see it, you know? And then you find like, oh, this is you. It's like, yeah, but the world is this.
I mean, are we saying that? Are you saying that you think that American culture is dysfunctional?
I want to go to the back. I think, is that Warrington?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, he's back there.
Yeah.
This is a topic I feel really passionate about. Milton and I have talked about quite a bit. I think we should be very hesitant to freely give up authorship. I think the central through line for black cinema has been whose story is it and who tells that story. And that while some political and business opportunities sometimes to form alliances to get the project done, in that moment, perhaps we lose while we're doing this, which is that whose story is it and who tells the story. So I hope all of us at that juncture always say, it's my story and I'm here to tell it. But part two, thank you for the shout out, Beth, because I have an extension of what I said to you many, many years ago about building the new door. This a new idea has come to me, and so I want to please share it. I hope it's useful. There is one other way to address these gatekeepers, which is build audiences. You mentioned Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is powerful because he built this gigantic audience long before he got into making television. He had this theater audience. If each of us, and again, social media allows us to do this, builds following. It's amazing. If you have a YouTube channel doing your short films that gets a real traction, then those gates will swing open. So I suggest each of us in our ways use social media to build following, and then whether you go through Indiegogo or Kickstarter, or convincing someone else to write you that check, because you have proof that when you make your story, there's somebody listening.
Yeah, I would say one more thing tied into all this. I know, obviously, I'm interested in black cinema and black stories, but the issues that we're discussing here are Latino issues, they're Asian issues, they're Native American issues. The whole question of seeing yourself on screen or seeing yourself on media is a huge challenge in America. I mean, because of the nature of racism here and institutional structures that we live in, and that's just the bottom line. So these are not, because we've talked, because we're concerned, you know, telling black stories or stories that deal with the African diaspora, but this is not, I mean, my friends who are Asian actors, I mean, they go to LA, you know, they get a McDonald's commercial, they're real, I mean,
They don't have, yeah.
it's not the issue of color stigma and the barriers that we work with is a color issue, and generationally, in theory, we should be getting past this, but in terms of what's going on the screens, clearly the old paradigms, we're still battling them no matter who you are, and I think that we're all in the battle together. I don't want to make it just a black-white thing. I think it is a color consciousness thing that unfortunately in the history of America challenges.
Yeah, yes, you're totally right. It's a status quo, period, you know.
I mean, I think just a quick point. I think it's really important to know what you want when you get into filmmaking. Know where you want to go. I mean, like if there's this video with Sam Greenlee who wrote The Spook Who Sat by the Door, and I think towards the end of it he says, you know, if you want to be a rich hoe, move to Hollywood. So you know, if Hollywood is your dream, then you know that you're probably going to have to give up some ownership and authorship of your work. I mean, I think that should just be known. I mean, because you're going to be plugged into, you're going to be a cog in a really big wheel. You're going to be part of a system, part of an assembly line process.
Matrix.
Yeah, I guess.
Which is very charming
So-
on the beginning.
I mean, you know, if that's your goal, if that's what you want,
You liked it? You had a good time?
No, but I remember that when we signed this deal, and now I'm saying this audience like something very private, right? But we signed this deal under the umbrella Warner Brothers, and it's like, wow, you know, you have the private jets, you have like the super VIP treatment, and look, and you have the access to purchase properties that I always all my life wanted. You know, imagine the access to buy, I mean, like, to get the possibility to get the book that you want. But then you develop 2 years, an amazing script, and you're so proud. And guess what? The green light never arrived, you know. And then you have like a pile of fabulous scripts with like fabulous directors attached, with great talent, you know, made in Hollywood, and nothing happens. And you know what? That story repeats and repeats and repeats. And I have so many conversations with so many incredibly talented, famous writers that they don't have anything green-lighted for years. So then is when the dream is falling apart. So it's like, you know what? There's some people that they're lucky that yes, that they can write the next Batman with another 8 writers, right?
You know something? No writers in America, maybe outside of advertising, get paid more per word than a successful Hollywood screenwriter. I mean, they get paid more per word. There's a lot of white space on that page, right? And there's not a more frustrated group of people that you're going to encounter than a quote-unquote successful Hollywood screenwriter, because no matter how successful, they probably have 10 projects that didn't get made to the one that did get made. And it's kind I don't like to meet when I'm in LA. I don't want to hang out with any writers out there, because inevitably the conversation gets dark. Because if they're not directors, you know, then they're chattel. And it's the well-paid chattel. You know, we can have a nice house in Silver Lake chattel, but it's a very, very tough lifestyle mentally if you're a creative person who came out to tell stories. And I find a lot of them paint or they do short stories, but that essence of storytelling that they worked their whole life to, they've given up a lot of it to the system.
But to the positive note, let's talk about the last 3 years. I mean, since this tremendous crisis started like 2008, look at the Oscars. You know, like there's like a bigger window of opportunity for like independent movies to be made. People that are not part of the status quo of Hollywood, and they're like doing extraordinary movies. So
Precious and
yeah.
I mean, I think
there's some good
right.
examples.
So I guess we're just saying don't move to LA. Is that what we're saying?
That's
We
good
love
for
New York.
us.
There's just that in the Yankees. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Malcolm Jones. I directed a film called The Magic City.
Speak up louder, bro.
My name is Malcolm Jones. I directed a film called The Magic City. And I just wanted to maybe share something with the audience, because from my experience in getting this film made, what we had to go through, right? I directed over 100 music videos, and even with that and signing with UTA, I still couldn't get my film financed. Right? You know, I went on some Hollywood meetings, had some studio projects up that ended up ultimately getting put on hold. So I said, let me go back home, Miami, and do my film. So I wanted to do the film. Had a script, meeting with investors, and couldn't get investors to invest in the film, right? So I took some money out of my account, started financing the film, started the project, and we shot maybe a quarter of the movie. Along the way, I said, okay, I know I needed to get some known actors, right? So this is what we did. Most of the film utilized children. Most of the scenes were for kids, but the scenes that I needed adult actors, I knew I wanted to bring in like Jennifer Lewis, I wanted Keith David, I wanted Jamie Heck. These were actors that I wanted. But I couldn't get investors to come in and help me finish the project, so I shot those scenes on 5D, right? Knowing with local actors, adult actors, knowing that I was going to eventually recast and reshoot those scenes, but I needed to provide my investors with something, because they're showing a script. It's very difficult to get an investor to finance the script. So they needed to see something. We strategically had screenings for potential investors and showed them the scenes that we shot, knowing that we're going to reshoot those later on and have the investors invested. And I used that paradigm in order to get funds to finish my movie. So what I'm saying is that just having a script alone is very difficult getting financed, but you got a 5D. I don't care if you have a cell phone, whatever it is that you have, shoot the script, start the project, and then it's easy for you to get financed once you have something done. And then to what Mr. Hillen was saying over there about building an audience, we've been test screening our film at the schools, at the colleges and the high schools, because we've been building our audience that way, in the process of actually fine-tuning the edit based on some of the test screen, how the films being test screening, but we've been building a serious following from that. We've got like 1.7 million hits already on our YouTube just by building our own audience. The project started I had a budget. I know what I needed to make the film. Didn't have the money, and I said, you know what? Let me just start it anyways. If you bill it, they'll come, right? So I said, let me try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let me just start. So you just gotta get.
So your film is finished, right?
Yeah, my finished film.
Let me make a suggestion to you. This is an idea that a few people are talking about. You know, Oscar Micheaux, who's the godfather of black film, what he did is he barnstormed with his films. He took the print around from city to city. And I think there might be a model there that's going on with indie rock and hip hop where, you know, in the new era, you have to go on the road to make a living. You can't just rely on record deals. What if you say with Magic City, I'm going to go on tour. I'm going to go to 5 cities where I know I have a lot of followers on my Facebook page, and I say I'm going to do a screening, and I'm going to charge $25. I'm going to charge double what I would play at the theater. For that, you get you get a T-shirt. You get some kind of video. You bring some of the actors, and you make it an event. You have a party afterwards,
This
right?
is a business model.
Yes.
You do it.
Well,
It's a new distribution model.
Right. I'm just saying that with you see what I'm saying? That you already have the people following you. Why are you worried about? You can take this to either you four-wall a theater or you do it at a community center. But you create an event in the places you know the people already are. You charge more than you will get from if they're willing to give you money on Kickstarter. They're willing to give you money in real life to hang out with you, because they want to be down.
And there's already online tools
Right.
that do this for you, Gather and Tug.
Right. I really think that this is going to be one of the ways in which we move forward, because the connectivity between the audience, going back to the community thing, this is the next level. I mean, every band that makes money now, it's the same model. I think filmmakers can use some version of this model for the future. And if you have that many followers already, you already have a community that wants to come out and see the film. Make an event around it. I mean, I think that's really viable.
Bring your friends.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
So I
Way to go.
Oh no.
any good advice about the distribution. This is program. I mean, I use arriving to New York City.
In Spanish?
Yes, I speak Spanish. So.
And what I'm saying, do you want to say it in Spanish? I
No,
just
no,
like
it's okay. It's fine. I can do it. I started to produce my new theater here in New York City, but the only thing I'm worried about, which I don't know how to do it, is the distribution for the movie.
But what kind of movie is that? It's a short, it's a feature.
Have you shot it?
We are.
You've shot it.
We are, no. We are not done yet, but we are.
They're in production,
All right.
Yeah.
and you're worried about distribution.
Well, I will say, like the first step is finish the movie, and then as soon
Right,
as you
that's
have
what I
like at least one first, editing that everybody's feeling happy with, if it's not completely finished, then you send it to festivals. I think that, this place is the networking place for everyone. For everyone who wants to start, like really in the industry, to make contacts, to show your people to other colleagues, to get the chance to probably get into a competition for a festival. I think it's the #1 place that you have to go. All the festivals, and you have a run, or you have access.
It's the same system that you used to do with the short film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. If you have a future, it's easier now because everybody's looking for content. So you can also send it to places like Netflix, like YouTube, like everyone who you could imagine that they can screen your movie. You have to do like a serious research. I recommend everyone to do research before they approach. So it's like they have similar content of something that you believe and they could like. Then that's your good place, because sometimes people just like trying in a complete, absolutely different universe.
And I would just plug for the community aspect of it, the Tribecca Film Institute, which is the nonprofit affiliate of the Tribecca Film Festival, so we're a separate organization. We work year-round, and we just launched a membership program. Memberships start at $45, and you get different wonderful, amazing membership perks, but one of which is we invite you to select work-in-progress screenings for filmmakers that we support who want an audience reaction. So it's a way to really get inside and learn more about the process of completing.
You should join that.
Yeah, so it's TribeccaFilminstitute.org. and there's a big membership button. And you would be supporting our education work and our work with filmmakers. So thank you all so much for your time.
Hey, follow. I like to